Welcome to Money Curve on DawnNews English, where we analyze markets and the forces shaping the global economy. Today we are exploring a fascinating intersection of faith, finance, and capital markets. Future of capital markets, in fact, from Sharia-compliant investing in Pakistan to the rise of digital assets and tokenization, which the landscape which is evolving faster than ever. I'm your host, Mohammad Bilal Moon, and joining us today is Faraz Bandukara. He's the CEO of Al-Hilal Sharia Advisors. It's a leading Sharia-compliant advisory firm working across mutual funds, capital structuring, and Islamic finance solutions. Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Faraz.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you, Bilal, for having me in.
So for us, just let's dive in quickly. And the first question which we ask usually during these charts is, how do you explain Sharia compliant investing to someone who's used to conventional finance?
Okay, so I think Islamic finance is not a new term anymore. And Islamic finance, where we talk about things that are compliant with Islamic principles, with the Sharia principles laid out in the Quran and Sunnah. So when we say that Islam is a code of life and Allah has given guidance on every aspect of life, be it how you live, how you interact with people, how you deal with people. So, of course, how can we leave out financial matters? So, if you're talking about investments, if you're talking about financial management, so in Islamic finance, we always comply with those principles that have been laid out by the Holy Quran and Sunnah. And there are three primary things that we need to focus on. First is the prohibition of riba or interest. Secondly, prohibition of gambling, and thirdly, prohibition of speculative uncertainty, or which is also called gharar. So all of the transactions in Islamic investments, Islamic capital markets are free from interest-based transactions, free from gambling-based structures, and free from speculative uncertainty.
Okay, are there any other key distinctions?
Primarily, these are the primary things, but of course, when you go for investments, so the investment landscape remains the same. The primary investable universe remains the same. But of course, with these restrictions that has been put out by the Sharia, we get a relatively limited universe to invest in. But of course, those are aligned with Islamic principles, those are asset backed, those are providing more concrete economic activity. So I think these restrictions, in fact, help pave way for stronger and efficient capital markets as well.
Okay, and where does your firm Al-Hilal Sharia Advisors come into this space? What value do you guys provide in terms of Sharia compliant investment?
Okay, so talking about the Al Hilal journey, Al Hilal, we started our venture in the year 2011 as the first Sharia advisory company in Pakistan. So basically, we have two wings. First of all, we are a corporate Sharia advisory service where a lot of Islamic financial institutions, primarily asset management companies and capital market players, including brokerage houses, REIT management companies, they come to us for Sharia advice. So usually what happens is larger or the bigger players have their own Sharia boards. But we introduced way back in 2011 a service where we have a dedicated Sharia board which provides outsourced services to Islamic financial institutions where we specialize. We have a very strong Sharia supervisory board that is globally recognized, and we provide them product structuring, structuring, Sharia audit, Sharia compliance. So basically, all Sharia matters are outsourced to us. And secondly, we have another company which is called Al-Hilal Securities Advisors, where we do investment management, investment advisory services in the Sharia space. So we
So
primarily, yes, please.
I'm guessing this all this came about because of the demand for Sharia compliant services in Pakistan.
Yes. So we primarily deal in Islamic mutual funds, equity portfolios. We do private credit, both in Pakistan and in the Middle East. And basically, there is a lot of demand for Islamic finance in Pakistan.
And where
Uh,
do you think the inflection point came in terms of Islamic finance and the demand for it in Pakistan? Is that in
is-
recent or the past decade?
Basically, the Islamic finance began somewhere around late 90s and early 2000s. But you see the full force impacting in the year 2008 and 9 when the economic meltdown in the world made people realize that having assets at the back made a lot of difference. And Islamic finance is always talked about asset backed or economic activity based activities. So I think that was the major point where people realized that having assets at the back in Islamic finance was one of the major solution, major powerhouse to be recognized. And then, of course, with the continued efforts of the regulators in Pakistan, a lot of awareness has been created, and now people specifically demand Islamic products. So if you just see the breakup of the mutual fund industry in Pakistan, roughly more than 50% of the assets under management are Islamic assets. And the largest asset management company in Pakistan is an Islamic asset management company.
Yeah. So you said that the demand was primarily driven by, when after the global economic meltdown in 2008 and people were looking for asset-based securities. So has there, in terms of, the demand in terms of is the demand been in terms of the retail investors, or has there been increase in institutional acceptance as well?
Primarily, the demand comes from the retail side. But yes, recently, I guess in the last 3 or 4 years, there has been a shift in the corporate sector as well. So a lot of family offices, a lot of small and medium private limited companies, they are opting toward Islamic finance because not only it is creating awareness for the Islamic principles, but it has been competitive in returns as well. So you see the returns of the conventional indices and the Islamic indices, those are both neck to neck. And
Okay,
sometimes the Islamic is going up, sometimes the conventional finance is going up. But generally, people are of the view that if, especially in the corporate sector, that if conventional Islamic is giving similar returns, they prefer Islamic, of course, because that adds a faith-based value as well.
sure. You mentioned that, the breakup would be somewhere, above 50% in terms of Islamic versus conventional assets, or in terms of investment landscape in Pakistan. Where do you think the gaps still remain in terms of product, or is that the awareness or the overall depth of the market as well? As people usually talk about asset liability mismatch in terms of the banks and their balance sheet as well, or in terms of what they can lend. Can you give us some insight into that?
Okay, the primary, I think, thing is that the capital markets have witnessed a lot of penetration in Islamic finance. Usually, it was like banking was leading the way about a decade ago, but now investments have emerged as frontline leaders in the Islamic space. But I think still a lot of work needs to be done on the government level as well as towards the larger corporate sector, where the demand for assets, demand for liabilities, both needs to be created through the awareness. Of course, when you talk about asset-backed securities or asset-backed investments, uh, the government needs to identify those assets that can be provided for the Islamic structures. I think it's more about willingness than the ability, and but still a lot of work has been done in the last 3 years towards this, and increasing awareness as well as increasing availability of these securities has increased the market share of Islamic in the last 2 3 years. And specifically with the direction of the state Supreme Court of Pakistan and the State Bank of Pakistan as well, for the conversion of the economy towards an Islamic economy, Islamic financial system. We've seen a lot of conversions going on in the banking industry as well. We are working with quite a number of banks here to convert the operations to a full-fledged Islamic bank. So that's a very, very good direction that we are moving in towards.
Okay. Generally your firm distributes mutual fund when I'm talking about capital markets. So how should investors think about allocating between Islamic equity funds, money market funds, and income funds? And just a brief on intro on how the Islamic money market and income funds also operate for the audience.
Okay. So Each and every individual investor is a different individual. So they all have different circumstances and they all have a different risk and return profile. But generally, if you are a long-term investor, and from a long-term perspective, I talk about like 7 to 10 years at least, then I think primarily your assets should be parked in the equity markets. If you see historically in Pakistan and of course globally, the equity markets have always outperformed the conventional money market and income fund categories. In Pakistan, what we generally see is that the equity markets usually give a return of somewhere around 18 to 20% per annum if you are invested in the longer run, if you are invested for the 5 to 7, 10 year horizon. So the average return on an annual basis is somewhere around 18 to 20%. Of course, there would be years, there would be wonderful years like the last 2, 3 years in Pakistan where you would see returns of 50, 60, 70, 80%. And of course, there are bad years where you get returns of -30, -40 as well. But
Yeah,
if you
we've
are
seen that
invested in the
seen that
longer
this
run,
year.
yes. But if you are invested in the longer run, I think earning a return of 18 to 20% is not a difficult thing in Pakistan.
Okay, so
So,
generally the investors that you have, are they more focused towards equity market, or they do have allocation towards money market and income funds as well?
our primary expertise lies towards the equity markets. Yes, but
Okay.
of course, whenever you are dealing with investments, you develop a portfolio, you manage different portfolios. So there are people with different risk and returns. So there are people who do 20% fixed income and 80% equities, and there are people doing 50-50. There are people doing 80-20 the other way as well. So of course, that depends on the risk and return profile. And sometimes we also advise people that the market is heated up, the market, there might be some economic problems, there might be some fundamental issues. So we do dynamic asset allocation
In
as
terms
well
of the
for our
return
portfolio
perspective,
clients.
do Islamic money market funds offer better returns than banking deposits if one is to go and book up Islamic product with directly with the bank, or invests through you or into the mutual funds? What kind of a return difference is there?
Yes, yes, definitely. If you are looking for a fixed income return, the mutual fund is the way to go. Mutual funds usually offer better returns as compared to banking deposits, and they offer higher liquidity as well. So, of course, in the mutual fund, you can withdraw money anytime you want, and you are getting somewhere around 2 to 3% extra in current rates of returns. So, I think if you are looking for fixed income returns and liquidity as well, Islamic funds are a better option, of course, for the retail market. But if you have a very, very large sum available, you are a big corporate, or you don't value liquidity much, you are able to lock in, then I think the returns are competitive for the banking sector. But generally, yes, the mutual fund is the way to go.
And are there any taxation differences as well, or an advantage in terms of tax optimization if investors go through mutual funds, Islamic money market funds, as opposed to directly, booking deposits with the bank?
Yes, definitely. The banking deposits are currently taxed at, I guess, 20%, while mutual funds are being taxed at 15%. So you get a 5% arbitrage as well.
Okay, and from my understanding, this can be the tax can be also offset if you have any prior or current year losses within the equity market as well. That would be adjusted.
Yes, yes. Capital gains tax can be adjusted against capital losses in the capital markets. Not against your overall tax, but yes, against capital gains.
And how do you see investors focus towards, or is there any focus towards investing into gold or commodities through mutual funds? And how does one go about it doing in a Sharia compliant way without actually getting the physical delivery of it going to the market or to the jeweler?
Recently, we've seen people wanting to invest a lot in gold and silver in Pakistan, as well as in the global scenario as well. But I think still the commodities market, especially the investment commodities market, is in a very, very infancy stage in Pakistan. you only have a couple of commodity funds, and only one of them is Sharia compliant. There is a gold fund out there. Of course, there are liquidity issues, there are investment issues with them as well, because the availability of physical gold is a challenge in Pakistan. But of course, that fund is doing good and it has a good base of assets available. I think there are two or three more funds with the regulators awaiting their approval. So I think with the launch of those funds as well, it will be a good thing to have in the market. And yes, it's a good option because apart from these funds, the only way to invest in gold in Pakistan would be to buy it physically from the jeweler. So it comes with both taking the money out there to the jeweler, the hassle, operational hassle is there. And then once you acquire gold, you have to safe keep it somewhere. So these two challenges make it a very, very tedious and difficult job to have. There is another product, I guess, available with the Pakistan Mercantile Exchange as well, where you can actually buy gold through the exchange. But once again, I think more awareness needs to be created for these products, as majority of the people are not aware about these products that are available in the market.
Yeah, it seems quite difficult to invest if you don't if you want to take physical delivery, then you have very limited options here, as opposed
Yes,
to foreign markets where you can invest into gold mining companies which actually have physical gold
physical
on
gold
their
on the balance
on their
sheets.
balance sheet. And
Yes.
yeah, so from a compliant, correct me if I'm wrong. So from a compliance perspective, that makes things easier for you guys to even recommend these to investors.
Yes, definitely.
So moving from traditional finance, Faraz, crypto remains a controversial topic in the context of a Sharia compliant investment. Where do you stand, and how would you explain the compliance of this asset category to the investors?
Yeah. What I personally believe is that cryptos has been very, very misunderstood by the very larger circles in Pakistan. I think crypto itself is just a technology. It's a blockchain technology where you are able to uniquely identify assets. And I think that technology will, going forward, replace those electronic registers of capital market shares or the registrar services and all. It's more of a technology to identify assets and to safeguard them from being reused or being commingled with others. But of course, there are a lot of investment avenues in the crypto market as well. So there are cryptocurrencies, there are company-based tokens, there are different use cases for different investments. So in the Sharia circles, there are different opinions available. So what I personally believe is that if there is a tokenization of some real world asset is happening through the crypto or the blockchain technology, that is perfectly Sharia compliant because the underlying asset is available. You're just providing a mechanism of, let's say, u- uniquely identifying those assets and making them available for trade in smaller retail chunks and making it available to a broader market. That is a very, very Sharia compliant way of investing. Problem
Okay.
lies.
So before we get into that, I think the basic question that the audience would want to ask is that
Mhm.
where do you guys stand on Bitcoin or Ethereum? Let's just take two tokens in terms of the market cap, and ask you in terms of where do they stand in terms of Sharia compliance, if one wants to invest in these.
Okay, so Sharia scholars that I usually talk to, they are of the opinion that Bitcoin and Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency should be Sharia compliant if it is legally acceptable by the regulatory authorities or by the legal authorities in the country. So recently, Pakistan has passed a bill in the National Assembly as well, where they've legalized crypto and these digital assets. So the mechanism has been built. There was a very, very, you can say, some skeptical things in the past in the Sharia circles that the government is not allowing it, it's not legal. So thereby they were reluctant to give Sharia opinions. But now we see a lot of Sharia scholars coming up that the government has allowed it. It is a legal form of investing, and it represents something at the back. So it should not be a problem, I think, coming up. You will be see Sharia opinions also coming up in the future.
Okay. Okay. So, as far as your firm is concerned, or the scholars that you talk to, as long as the regulatory authority within that jurisdiction allows acceptance of crypto, it could be considered compliant. Is that what?
Yes, it could be considered compliant, but of course, it comes with its caveats as well. So, when we talk about Islamic capital markets, investing in the stock market as well, generally shares are considered compliant, but of course, they have their certain restrictions, certain thresholds that if you meet this particular criteria, then there's a considered Sharia compliant, and of course, you have to trade in a Sharia compliant manner as well. So that goes for cryptos as well. So there are certain restrictions, there are certain limitations, there are certain thresholds that needs to be met. And once you meet those criteria, and you of course trade in a Sharia compliant manner, then it can be Sharia compliant.
Okay. In terms of the delivery method, usually these tokens are delivered to your wallet
Almost
instantly, right?
immediately, yes. Almost
Yeah.
immediately, yes.
So there is no issue of taking delivery or waiting for T+1 or T+2 like we have within the stock market.
Yes, that's correct. But of course, you cannot go for conventional leveraged buying or derivative products within the crypto market. That's a very big market in cryptos. So of course, there are a lot of restrictions, but if you work it the right way, I don't think there should be a problem.
Okay. Okay. So, and right now, one of the biggest themes within tokenization or within the crypto world is the tokenization of real world assets. And, could you briefly explain how does Islamic finance think about this, or and what are the kind of assets that can be tokenized? And for the just the basic knowledge of our audience, if you can just briefly explain and simplify what are real world asset and tokenization of these assets.
Uh, since you would be knowing that a very, very big asset class in Pakistan and a very, very investor friendly, not saying investor friendly, but the love of investors is a real estate investment in Pakistan. People are very fond of doing real estate investments. But of course, the real estate investment is very, very illiquid and it comes with a very, very big ticket size. So what it is being now done in Pakistan as well as in the global space is that people are tokenizing or fractionalizing those real estate investments. So you have a big chunk of land, you have a big building coming is there, and if you go for just a single apartment or shop, you would be needing somewhere around 30, 40, 50, 60 million rupees to invest in. But with this fractionalization of real world assets, tokenization of real world assets, what you are doing is you are taking it to the retail market, the ultra retail market, where you tokenize those units into small chunks of, let's say, 10 rupees each, or 50 rupees each, or 100 rupees each. And that becomes easier to invest for the people. It's safeguarded by the blockchain technology where each and every unit is separately identifiable and uniquely administered. And thirdly, it comes with a liquid market as well. So if there are a lot of people coming into the market and the liquidity is available through different international or global exchanges and people are tokenizing those units, so that becomes easier for them to invest and it creates a big capital market as well. Same
So
goes
there is
for
there is fractional ownership, there is liquidity, and because of the blockchain technology at the back end, there is
sec-
transparency there as
and
well.
security as well. Yes, security as well.
And how
And
does that differ from investment into REITs that we have listed on the stock exchange?
okay,
I'm
once
talking about
again,
real in real estate context
yes, yes,
only.
yes, yes, yes. Basically, what we've seen over the past several years that the investor base in the capital markets of Pakistan has not increased considerably as compared to the population of Pakistan. As we compare with countries of similar nature, you talk about Turkey, you talk about India, you talk about Sri Lanka or Bangladesh as well. They roughly have somewhere around ranging from 1% to 15% of their population engaging into capital market activities. But this number has been very, very low in Pakistan. Although a lot of work has been done in the recent last 2, 3 years to increase this investor base, but still we are somewhere around 500,000 people who actually invest in the capital markets. And of course, this is due to a lot of problems with the account opening, with the performance of the capital markets and all. But on a very, very similar stage, if you talk about cryptos in Pakistan, we've got numbers that show that somewhere around 3 to 4% of the population of Pakistan is actually investing in the crypto markets. So that poses a very, very large audience. And if you can tokenize real estate of Pakistan, if you can, a lot of companies in Pakistan have sprung up who are fractionalizing gold in Pakistan as well. So of course, when you want to buy gold, you're buying it physically. You get to hold one tola of gold, which is roughly around 500,000 rupees. And if you can make it available for 500 rupee chunks, you just increase the investor base. And with these crypto exchanges and easy to onboard, I think that would be a game changer for Islamic capital markets in the future in Pakistan.
And apart from real estate, can investors get into sukuks or infrastructure assets as well uh, through these tokenized, real world tokenized assets?
That particular asset, and you can make smaller and smaller liquid chunks with very, very small ticket sizes. And using, of course, the blockchain technology, you can divide it as small as you want. So once this division is being done, and of course, with these regulatory approvals now in place for digital assets and fractionalization, a lot of companies are springing up who will be providing fractionalized gold, fractionalized real estate, fractionalized sukuk, because of course when you go into the sukuk market, the normal ticket size is 1 million rupees, so you would be doing it for the retail investors as well. So I think a lot of space is there available there for the retail market to spring up.
Like finance principles, like asset backing and transparency.
Just the asset is there. You're just giving access to smaller investors in a partnership mode, in a joint ownership mode, and Sharia allows that. And I think it aligns with Sharia principles as well as the goals of the capital markets as well to include a larger investor base.
Okay. And how far do you think we are in terms of introducing such a product in Pakistan, the RWA, these tokenized product?
It's just the beginning. And I think the market is now ready for this. And the first mover advantage would be with the people who quickly get into these things, start tokenizing different assets that people want to buy, but are unable to buy because of larger ticket sizes. I think there would be a huge interest coming up from the overall population of Pakistan.
Sure. So for us, coming back to the capital markets here in Pakistan, where do you see the market? It has corrected 25-30%. Where do you see the flows going in terms of your eyes on the Islamic money market and mutual funds? And what would be your recommendation to the investors right now in terms of this global uncertainty?
I personally feel that the fundamental problem is not there. The economic problem, yes, of course, we have economic jitters with rising oil prices and global uncertainty, but I think this is a very, very good time to invest in. If you are not an investor, a good time to begin your journey. The market is down, the price is down, and the moment you see some positive news that the war is coming to an end, the disruption is coming to an end, you will see a good rise in the market once again. I think fundamentally companies are doing good in Pakistan. We have an oil price shock, but I think that has been absorbed. And in the next few weeks to come, if things normalize, inshallah, we would see once again things normalizing. And once again, secondly, what I earlier stated as well, equity markets is a long-term game. So you don't talk about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 months, and see that the market is coming down or going up. I would personally say to my retail clients is that go for the systematic investment plan. Whatever the market levels are, whatever the economic condition are, just put in money each and every month make it a habit of saving and investing, and you'll see that you've made a good portfolio and a good return over the next 5, 7, 10 years. People who started doing SIPs like 10 years ago, they've made more money than people trying to time the market.
Of course, the time in the market instead of timing the market.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So for us, quick rapid fire with you answers. What would be the one misunderstood concept in Islamic finance?
I think people believe that money made on money is not non-compliant. But I think, of course, you make money using money. But if you utilize that money in the correct way, you get into good contracts, get into Sharia compliant processes, then of course your money will make money by investing.
Okay. One opportunity in Pakistan that people are missing currently?
Investing in the stock market. Sharia
Okay.
compliant stock market, there is a lot of space, a lot of room, and a lot of return, potential return that is available.
And finally, crypto, is it an opportunity or a distraction?
Big opportunity.
Okay. So that was Faraz Bandukara, CEO of Al-Hilal Sharia Advisors, sharing his insights on the evolving world of Islamic finance, from traditional investing to the frontier of digital assets. If there is one key takeaway, it's that the future of finance may just not be digital, but it also may be more ethical, transparent, and grounded in real assets. You've been listening to Money Curve on Dawn News English. I'm Bilal Moon, signing off. Thank you so much.